Alright, I got our starter from the junkyard. It's a little greasy, but as long as it works, I'm not too concerned. I'm going to go ahead and test it out before I install it, just to make sure. I just got a battery hooked up with jumper cables. Just going to connect the negative over here. Okay, power. Connect this to that. And then to actuate the solenoid, I've just got a little jumper wire. And I'm just going to put it into this right here. Show you guys the Bendix starter gear. Looks like it works just fine. Obviously this isn't testing it under a load, but this is pretty good. It shows us that more than likely it's going to be fine. So I'm happy with that. Let's get it in. Alright, so a couple things to note on the starter wiring. You have this main wire coming from the battery terminal, the positive battery terminal. That goes to the starter positive terminal, and then you have this fusible link that goes over from the starter to the alternator. And then additionally on the alternator, you also have this smaller spade connector that coming off of the wiring harness that goes on with that same nut. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and make sure everything is squared away under here. There is a crank position sensor, I believe, is what it is, that we need to plug in down here. I left it out so I can get to the starter bolts easier. Looks like you do want to pull out this red lock. What I did is I just lifted up this tab away from the plug, and then you just pull out on the red part. So now that we've got pretty much everything squared away down here, I think we're ready to go ahead and get the intake manifold in place. I'll just give a quick once over, make sure there's no other plugs that need plugged in, and if everything checks out, then I'll go grab the intake and we can get it installed. So before we get this put in, obviously we're going to install new seals, but kind of a design flaw on these is that the PCV passes through this port here, and you can see it actually get plugged solid with carbon. So we're going to make sure this is totally free, because if it's not, then the PCV system is not going to operate properly, and it's going to make the insides of the engine carbon up, oil varnish, all that. So that's kind of a common problem on these. As you see inside the ports here, there's lots of carbon buildup. This is really common on direct injection motors, not only in the intake manifold, but also on the back side of the valves. I'm going to go ahead and try to clean this up as best I can before we get it in there. I'm just going to use a pick to get these old seals out. See, they've hardened up a little bit. They're not horrible, but definitely a good time to replace them. See this nasty oil buildup? It's not a bad idea to blow some compressed air through this hole just to make sure the entire passage is clear. So I will do that before we get it installed for good. Alright, I went ahead and removed all of our paper towels that were covering up the ports. You do want to make absolutely sure that nothing has fallen down the intake ports. See, we're getting a little bound up on this heat shield, heat insulator, what you're going to call it. See what's going on there. You need to pull it back out. Just want to make sure it stays like that. Alright, according to the service manual, the torque spec on both the nuts and the bolts is 89 inch-pounds. So that's what we'll do it to. Obviously this is something you want to torque down fairly evenly. One thing to note that I should have said earlier, The bolt with the little stud coming off of it goes in this bottom right corner. So now I'm just going to make sure this heat shield is in place. Then we'll go ahead and get everything that attaches to the intake manifold onto it. This is the fuel rail connector. Fuel injector harness, I guess you could say. Goes up to this boss here. That's the connector. I'm going to wait to get it plugged in. Obviously you can see, I believe this is probably a map sensor. That gets plugged in there. Now this is the dipstick. You see there's a little bracket on there. And this bolt. This 10mm bolt attaches the bracket to that pad on the intake. I think it got bent up a little bit when I was removing the engine, so I'm going to need to wrestle a little bit to get it back in there. The positive battery terminal does have a clip that goes into the dipstick, just like that. Then you can see this coolant tube routes like so. This zip tie has a little clip at the end that attaches to the dipstick bracket. Obviously I'll need to still attach that clamp, and then this clip attaches to the rad hose. So I think with those all routed, I'll go ahead and get these plugs both in. And we should be able to get the throttle body in place also. Got a replacement seal, so we'll remove the old one. I just had that glove in there to prevent gunk from falling in. Those just need snugged up. Go ahead and get the connector for the e-throttle in. There we go. At this point we should be able to get the high pressure fuel pump installed. I couldn't find my quick release tools to remove the fuel line, so I just left it in the car in this plastic bag. Here's its gasket. I'm gonna go check if our kit came with a new one. So it doesn't look like our head gasket kit came with a new one. This should be fine to reuse though. It's a metal shim gasket. Let's get that put in place. Looks like it's starting to snow or something. Now one thing to notice is that the high pressure fuel pump won't go in all the way unless it's on the base circle of the lobe that it rides off of the cam. So if it won't go down all the way, you just need to rotate the engine some. But we were lucky and it was already good to go. I'll have to look back at my picture to see how this gets routed. But we do have this line that goes from the high pressure fuel pump over to the fuel rail. I don't recall which end goes where, so we're just going to need to figure it out. Looks like just like that. I'm going to go see what wrench I need. So it looks like these are both 17mm. I'm going to look back at my picture and see how that fuel line goes. Oh, looks like that was out of focus the whole time. Whoops. So here's how the fuel line goes from the high pressure fuel pump to the fuel rail. Back at my pictures, it seems like this coolant line actually goes on top of the fuel line. If I can get it out. And then this attaches onto the head right there. So then this coolant line plugs into here. like that. Okay, now there is a cover that we're gonna need to put on over the high pressure fuel pump. I think we actually may need to unplug this connector. And it just goes in place like that. You do need to make sure the stud goes on like that. Here are the bolt locations. They're 10mm bolts, so you have two over here. And obviously one nut that goes under the stud. Then this coolant line we plugged in goes like that, held in place nicely. Additionally, this wiring harness plugs in up here. And also, get it to focus, there's another one of those down there. Definitely helps tidy everything up a little bit. Now we can get this plugged back in. Man, this thing has to be a little bit annoying to change the oil on. Your fuel pump gets held on with these two long black bolts. They're 10mm headed. And then this additional silver bolt holds the line on up here. When Ben cut out the previous place where I installed these bolts, I had the wrong one over here. So just cut that and then put the new part in, I guess. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and install the cam position sensors now. Really, this should have been done earlier. You could have done it as far back as when the engine was out, but I didn't have them until now. So hopefully I don't have to backtrack at all to get them on there. I should have thought about it, but here we are. Now we get the plug for it plugged in. Cool. Now for the rear one. Alright, just got the wiring harness plugged in here. Should be good. I think now I will do these coolant lines for the heater core. I think we'll do the heat shield next. The Dorman manifold came with new heat shield bolts, so that's kind of nice because they have a tendency of rusting out. I'll show you guys this. Looks like we're gonna need to grab a big washer. This thing should do. While we're back here, we do have this ground strap. I believe it goes into right here. I'll also go ahead and plug in the O2 sensor. There we go. Let's see where that little holder goes. Oh, cut that out. We'll figure out where that goes. Alright, next up we've got this Purge Solenoid. Alright, this is kind of in a hard to see place, but let's see, there you go, right there. You can see, I believe that's the coolant temp sensor or something. Anyways, this connector with the heat shield, if I can kind of snake it down here. So it plugs into that. Then you just have that go over it, that, to keep it from the heat. I think we should have everything buttoned up back here. The thing that's really common on these is this breather hose. Gets super brittle from the oil, and it will actually break when you try to take it off. So let's see if we can get it off. Something to get it open. Actually, I think I have one on there. You see, this hose gets really hard. So here's their replacement. I was able to get it off Amazon for like $8, I think, and it was like next day delivery, so not complaining about that. Take these tags off. I think this goes into the air box, so maybe we'll wait on that. We'll just have that ready. Let's see, I mean, we don't have much more. We have the upper radiator hose that needs replaced right here. And other than that, I mean, I think we have all the wiring harness plugged in. We can get these coils plugged in now. That might go to the bracket that goes back here, now that I think about it. So this is the bracket I was talking about. I'm pretty sure the only purpose this thing serves is to be a place of attachment for like the beauty cover, whatever they call it. I don't even usually put them on my cars, but hey, whatever. So, just bolt that in real quick. And then finally, use this to hold up the 2 sensor wire harness. And I think that's it back there. Alright, so now we should be able to get the battery box in. This thing's pretty gross, so I'm going to give it a quick clean. Well, I got super windy here all of a sudden, so hopefully it's not, the mic's not picking it up too bad, but I got the new hose, so let's get the old one out. Oh wait, never mind. I think these are just wacky spring clips. Alright, I was finally able to get the clamp off the hose. I had to mangle it though, so we're going to be using snow hose clamp. So these clamps, they're not, I didn't break it, they're just annoying. I think there's special pliers that you can get for these, but I don't understand why they don't just have the 2 tabs, you know, so you can use the normal pliers. Whatever. Probably saves them half a cent or whatever. So, alright, I've got just regular hose clamps on both ends of the hose. That should be all of the coolant lines on. So I think we'll go ahead and fill up the reservoir. Try to fill this system up before we get anything else on. That way if there's any leaks, we should be able to access everything easier. Alright, ordinarily I concentrate and mix it with distilled water, which I still got concentrate, but for some reason there's a weird distilled water shortage in my area, so I couldn't find any. So I'm just using tap water. It should be okay. Deck's cool, obviously. Hopefully the wind doesn't get us. Alright, there's a gallon. Makes it a little bit more difficult when I spill it everywhere. Now there's a huge puddle on the ground, so that's awesome. But yeah, I think it's just from me spilling. Other than that, we're looking good. We can also go ahead and get the oil in. Why not? So I'm using Super Tech oil, which is, I think, Walmart's like no-name brand. I use it because it's cheap, and it also meets all of the API specs, so it's good enough for me. I know the funnel's not dirty, it's like stained with oil. I just washed it out, so. Check the leaks. I did torque the drain bolt, so that's good. I don't see any coolant leaks or oil leaks, so that's a good sign so far at least. There we go. It's full. It's going to drop a little bit because the filter housing obviously has no oil in it currently. Let's get the battery tray in. I washed it up. I think it's where I stopped. Alright, let's go ahead and get the air box on before we get the battery in. This was all taken off before I actually started working on this thing, so hopefully all the bolts and stuff are here still. Hope you can see how it goes. Alright, so now we just need to get the battery in, get the ECUs in. Not ECUs, ECU, singular. Yeah, I think we're doing pretty good there. I'm gonna go grab the battery. It's been on the charger. Battery terminals are a little crusty on this thing. It's got a pretty new battery in it. I think it's a 2021 model. Date of manufacture, I guess. I'm sure there's probably a procedure on this because probably don't want to plug in the ECUs while the battery's on. Not ECUs, I keep saying that. ECU while the battery is plugged in. So I think maybe we can plug it in first and then just flop it on there. We'll see. Oh, looks like the windshield wipers are on. Well, you know, before we get too crazy getting all the little finishing stuff on, we can probably start it up now. We'll just obviously, ECU can sit there. I don't want to set it on here. Well, actually, it's got a plastic bottom. Should be okay. Set it on there like that. Let's see, we got coolant in it. We got oil in it. I think we should be good, honestly. Yeah, cool. Let's get all the tools cleared off. Alright, well, I did a final bolt check. I mean, there's no bolts that are obviously missing, and there's none that I still have bagged, except for ones that already got replaced. So, I think we're good to give this thing a go. Ah, it's in neutral. Okay, here we go. Fuel level low, okay, that's fine. Service StabiliTrak. Interesting. Does not want to start up. Okay. Let's just check all the obvious stuff. We're in park. Brakes in. I think we should be good. No crank. Interesting. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and check if the computer is sending the crank signal. So, hey Elijah, go ahead, turn the key again, foot on the brake. You can see it's not. The thing I noticed, which is going to kind of key us into what the issue is that when you turn the key to on, see how the lights come on, but there is no check engine light. Now, when the ECM has power, and it's on start but not crank, you'll see the check engine light come on. I believe that its position is down here, and you can see it's not coming on. So that leads me to believe that the ECM is not getting power. Alright, so let's check the fuses. Make sure our test light is grounded. And let's check on here that we're getting power. There we go. So, looks like ECM 42, 20 amp, right there. So 42 here. Okay, so that should be, I believe this one. Keys on. See, we got power on the one leg, and we got power on the other. So we've powered through the ECM fuse. I'm curious. Power there, not there. What is that? That is 10, I believe. Air pump. Meter? MTR? I don't know. LEA and NU6. I believe that's what this is. So possibly it's missing a fuse there, but I don't think that would cause what we're seeing. Air pump, I don't know what it's for. But, okay. What about this one? You see we're getting power there, but not in that leg. That's number 4. Window RT. So, not something we're concerned about. Alright. Well, so we know that the ECM is getting power through the fuse box. Now, I suppose we need to check in the wiring harness. Hey guys, so I'm thinking this issue has to be some kind of grounding issue or something along those lines, and after a lot of thinking, and some reading, I realized there was kind of a weird, what I thought was a power wire that I put on the alternator. That could be a ground. So, yeah, let's pull it off and see. Well, it's pretty tight in here now with everything on, unfortunately. But it's also pretty dark. Let's see if that helps. You see, or maybe you can't, I don't know. Well, actually it broke off. Look at that. Let's peel back this. Yep, that's a ground. Whoops. Hopefully I didn't damage anything. I am an idiot. Alright, well, let's strip back this wiring and just hook it up to ground with a jumper cable and see what happens. Alright, I got the insulation pulled back here. Just temporarily I have it grounded to the engine block. So let's put the battery back on and hopefully see what happens. Alright, here we go. Oop. Check engine lights on. Alright. Could just be priming the fuel system, we'll see. It's getting there, it's close. Okay guys, I got it to start up, but we've got a misfire going, so probably a bad coil or something like that. We're running out of daylight, but got the scanner in here. It's just a red dot. Unfortunately, my phone, I use my phone to connect to it, so, and I'm filming with my phone right now, so you're not gonna be able to see it. But I will let you know what the code is. So we were getting a code for low fuel pressure at the fuel rail while cranking, and after thinking about it, I realized I made kind of a boneheaded mistake. Another one, of course. I think I mentioned it earlier, but the remanufactured head I got through the machine shop I use for my cylinder heads, and I had to drop off the core when I picked up the remanufactured head that I ordered through them. So I didn't know exactly what the new head would come with and what the old one, what I would need off the old one. And one thing that I sent back in on accident is one of these, which is the high pressure fuel pump lifter, cam follower, whatever you want to call it. And I just realized I never put one in because I didn't think to check about it. So we're going to need to pop the high pressure fuel pump back off and then get that in place so that we actually have a functioning high pressure fuel pump. So let's do it. Alright, I've got this cam follower lubed up with just some engine oil. You can see there's that little tab. Line that with the groove, and it just sits down in like that. Now we're gonna have to turn the engine by hand just to make sure that we're on the lowest part of the cam lobe, the base circle. So I'm gonna do that, and then we can get the high pressure fuel pump bolted back up. Okay, there it is back on. Before we get the cover back on, let's go ahead and test it. It was also throwing a code for cylinder 3 misfire along with cylinder 3 coil open circuit. So that coil possibly is bad, or there's a faulty wiring or something, but we'll just test this and see what happens. Alright, let's start it up. I'll start it up and then I'm going to have to switch to torque so that I can check the codes. I probably knocked that ground wire loose under the car that we still need to fix. Okay, the ground wire is back on. It's really hot in here. I'm going to roll down the window. Let's give it another go. Well, you can see it started much easier. We still have a misfire. So likely that coil is bad. I'm going to switch over and see what the codes are. Okay, sure enough, it's still throwing the code for the cylinder number 3 coil. I do have an extra one, so we can try putting that on there and see if the code persists, and go from there. Guys, this was simple. Looks like I just didn't plug the connector in all the way. That's pretty common to find an issue like that. There will always be like a sensor or something you forget to plug in. You go to check engine light for it. So there we go. Should be in solidly now. Let's get the air cleaner back in place and start it back up. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, much better. Now the loud exhaust you're hearing is, I think, oh, a little stumble there. Okay, well we'll pull codes again and see what's up. The loud exhaust is from, I don't think the exhaust manifold is seated all the way from the collector to the exhaust system, so we'll have to get back in there and check that. Alright, I'm going to pull codes and see what's up. Okay, started it back up, and it's running quite well. It is throwing a code for cam crank correlation, which is unfortunate. I did have to replace the 2 cam sensors because I sent the old 2 back with the remanufactured head core like an idiot. But anyways, some motors you have to do some kind of a relearn process with a scan tool, or else it'll throw this kind of thing. As far as I know, I don't think that's a thing on this motor. So it's possible that somehow I skipped a tooth installing the timing chain, or when installing the motor. I mean, I don't know when that would happen, because I did double check it, but you know, stuff happens. It's always easy to mess up, unfortunately. Maybe I will shut it off and we can check the exhaust manifold, see why that's not sealing up. So I'll fix that up real quick and we can go on from there.